here also.
Picture this. You've sent hundreds of resumes and crickets. You've translated your resume into perfectly beautiful French. Still nothing. You're bilingual or trilingual, globally experienced and qualified. So why does the French job market still feel like a secret club you can't crack? Here's the twist. What if the problem isn't your CV? What if the secret isn't sending more and more applications, but understanding the rules of the game? Hi, I'm Tanja with TPTalks Working Global. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Yevgeniya, global HR expert who spent over 15 years going from recruitment to interviewing and onboarding and managing mobility. She's originally from Kazakhstan, and she has worn more hats before she got into HR, working in embassies, managing accounts and events, as well as international mobility. In her free time, she helps foreign professionals navigate the French job market, master cultural nuances, and succeed in their careers here in France. Today, she'll share her expert advice on standing out and understanding the keys to job search success in France. Welcome, Yevgeniya.
Hello, Tanja. Hello, everybody. And thank you very much. Honored to be here with you today. Thank you for invitation. And thank you also for this kind and complete introduction, I would say. I don't know even what I can add to that because you revealed quite well what I've been doing through my life.
Well, I'm really happy to have you here because we've been online connecting for a year now, and I've been really looking forward to having this chat with you. But before we get deep into the topic of tonight, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your story? Where now I already mentioned where you come from, but a little bit your story and bring us to speed what you do today.
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. People like to talk about themselves, so it's my case too. So as you mentioned, I'm coming from Kazakhstan, born in Almaty, was living there before I decided to move abroad, actually in France. And the funny thing is I was bilingual starting from 7 years old, thanks to
Oh.
my parents, because I started to learn French language very early, and then English language was added because they put me in a special school where you speak few languages. So now I realize I'm so happy because I'm born in Soviet Union and it was not so common. So thanks to my parents, I have had this possibility to move abroad later. Because of course the languages can help you out. And indeed, I started my career after the studies in Kazakhstan. Also, it was interesting for me to build a company while I was studying in the last years of the university in Kazakhstan.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying a bit of entrepreneurship even before I started work. And I was working with abroad universities. Again, we talk here about being trilingual, bilingual, working with foreigners. And I think it's what brought me step by step to the idea of moving to another country. So basically in France, because it was easier for me, I was speaking French, and also now working a lot with foreigners. So yeah, I was working in the embassies, I was managing an account, I was doing a bit of recruitment, and that was the moment that I was starting to think, okay, actually HR can be something interesting. But I was not thinking at the beginning of my career that I will end up in human resources, where I'm
Okay.
working for more than 12 years now in France. So it's a diploma that I actually got here in France, a specialized master degree after already working for years in FMCG industry. So now I'm working as HR project manager in a company in wine and spirits, which is a very nice place, by the way, just by the nature of the products we are selling. For more than 12 years, I'm managing HR topics. It's daily, basic tasks in HR, but also a lot of recruitment, onboarding, as he told me, and also working on international scope, helping our subsidiary to do some change management, implement some processes, translating it in local culture, and we will talk about it later. So that's globally what I'm doing now. And I also suffered a bit when I came to France, if I may say, because I was speaking French and I thought it will be easy. The tricky part here is even though you speak language, sometimes when you don't understand how the culture function, you need time to learn it. And my first job search was very complicated because as a foreigner, I needed a visa. And you know, French market is not easy for this part.
Right.
Sometimes administrative part and visa issues, they are very common. So I got quite a lot of refusals before I got my first contract signed, and somehow by luck, because I met a CEO of the company by chance who was interested, and actually we discussed and he proposed me a job. So
Oh,
yeah, the mix of luck, a lot of struggle, and that's, by the way, the reason I started to support the foreigners in their job search, because I remember how hard it was for me back then. So I said for myself, okay, I decided that it's necessary, maybe I can help somebody to settle in France and understand how it works here.
Oh, that's a lovely story. Now you said that you're lucky, but I bet you prepared a lot and you're persistent. So luck met you halfway, no?
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, I did a lot of things before I met by luck this person, and of course, I was exploring all the possibilities on the French job market. But indeed, the problem was the visa, and some companies was telling me straight that we like you, we would love to have you, but we have two candidates for this position, you and another French man and woman, and unfortunately, we are not maybe into much spending time and money in preparing your visa. So yeah, the HRs were sometimes very transparent with me.
All
And
right.
I'm thankful for that, because at least I understood what was the problem. It was not even
Sure.
me, but it was this visa issue.
Sure. And that keeps you going. That doesn't discourage you and make you feel like, oh gosh, you're starting to question yourself, your knowledge, and everything that you've done. And I think it's great that they were transparent and you kept on persevering and voila, you got it.
Yeah, exactly. And here I am, still here.
Great. Now, as you're getting into your job, before I ask you the next question, how many languages do you speak and which ones? I'm
So
curious.
me, on daily basis, I speak three languages: English, French, and of course Russian, which is my mother tongue. But I also understand a bit of Turkish, a bit of Kazakh, because of course I was living in Kazakhstan half of my life. I'm living in France for 21 years, so yeah, exactly half of my life. And I have a bit of understanding of German, but I don't practice it enough. So three languages, it's my daily basis.
Wow, what a bouquet of languages. I'm sure probably can be very helpful, but I'm sure I know I speak a couple too, but in the evening sometimes I get a headache and I just kind of want to put myself in a bubble and not talk to anybody.
You're getting tired sometimes by the end of the day, and you mix words. It happens to me too.
Right, right. So let's get into the first question. According to you, what are let's like the biggest challenge international professionals have when job hunting in France?
I think that there is a sort of misunderstanding, at least is what I see when I work with my clients, is maybe underestimate the importance of speaking French here.
Ah,
Because a lot of foreigners are coming here and they think that they speak English, so they will easily find a job here. And yes, they can find a job here. And of course, it's great that you speak at least two or three languages. But at the same time, even though you will work for an international company, sometimes the daily things in the company, the daily life is happening half in French. So it's very useful because we're talking about the culture where French is still quite predominant. And I think it's important when you're coming from abroad to understand that even though you don't speak fluently French, it's good to take some classes to better integrate and to understand. Because from my perspective, the language is actually sort of key, you know, for the understanding of the local culture. And if we talk about the concept of language in general, it's what it is sort of called that let you understand the mentality, the ways of being, the culture, the ways of maybe, expressing some things. So when, as a foreigner, you're already coming with this background from your home culture, your own culture, when you're coming in another country like France, the language might help you actually to better decode the things that's happening in the everyday life and also at work. Then, of course, sometimes it's a misunderstanding of the norms, because I saw like a lot of CVs of 3, 5 pages, for example, from the clients coming from India, China. So these kind of small things you need to take into account too, because there are norms in the market that you need to respect. Otherwise, if you send 100 CVs and there are 2 or 3 or 5 pages, nobody will read it. So, of course, it will become complicated and it will make you doubt. And also, there are questions related to the motivation letter. It's very typical French thing that sometimes abroad is not asked. Now the tendencies are changing, so not everybody's asking that, but it's good to know that some companies may still ask you that. I also think that there's a big mistake to think that in France, if you send your CVs around all the job boards, it's how you will get the job. And I will always highlight that not only in France, everywhere in the world, but in France, particularly in network, actually, it's a big part of the job search. Okay. So I would highly suggest to people, to start networking even before coming to France. Or if you're already in France, think about that too. And then the mistakes, it's more about, the conduct calls and the ways of negotiation. For example, it's what I see sometimes from the behaviors that I can see when I'm working with the foreigners, is like maybe jumping too straightforward or too early in the discussions about salary, for example, or being considered like too aggressive when you ask questions about the money or about the ways work is organized in the company. So those are the things that you have to double check before you're coming. And of course, as we were talking about my issue with the visa, if you're coming from a foreigner country and you're coming to France, but you don't still know how visa things works here, I really highly suggest to all the people to double check it before even coming, just to understand, will it be easy? How much time you will have to find a job? Under what visa you can come in France and stay, studies, talent visa, how many money actually you will need to have on your account to have this kind of visa, because the French administration can be very, very complicated. And it's a pity to come here to stay 2, 3 months on the touristic visa and then to understand that you need to leave and you cannot actually do your job search in France.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that the visa and to be able to support yourself financially are important before you even go into thinking French classes. And of course, I think it's only normal that one needs to speak French because we're in France. It's like there are certain places, I believe, that I had in my experience when I lived in Brussels. You can find pockets of expat communities where you're only speaking English, but that's just a pocket. Like I said, it's not the reality.
Well, it depends on the cities we're talking about. Of course, Paris and Lyon, for example, being big cities, it's much more easy. And of course, you can in Paris find people who speak English, French, Spanish, German, Russian. And I personally know some people who live here like for 5, 6 years and still don't speak French, but they speak Russian or Ukrainian, for example, doing like small jobs, not very like maybe highly qualified job, but still don't speak too much of French. And they are managing, it's okay. But if you are talking about the career and ambitions, of course, I think it's easier when you start to integrate in the culture. And we're also talking about France. I mean, French, this symbolic idea of French people being a bit snobbish sometimes, too proud of their culture, maybe does exist, but at the same time, French are really having a very rich culture. So it's important to try to understand it and to integrate into the French culture, because it will be easier for you to work here.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because coming also from, even though I speak English, I'm originally from Slovenia, and having come to France, it's funny because I started acting like a Slovenian and I was very direct. And in the French that I was talking to, they were not as direct. And I very quickly learned the codes that, Tanja, don't be that direct. First, you want to have a little bit of small talk to get to know one another. You network and you don't ask about the job the first time or the second time. You establish a bit of a relationship. It's like asking someone, hey, you want to go out with me on a first time meeting?
Yeah,
A little too
exactly.
much. And that's something what I learned, and that what you just mentioned just rang to me of just being very aware of how you behave and where you are and how to kind of dance. Since
Yeah,
young
exactly.
friends.
Because speaking the language is one thing, but also we can talk here about cultural awareness. And for the people, I'm very in love with this book, and I suppose everybody knows that Erin Meyer, the culture maps. I think it helps quite a lot if you need to work with foreigners, not, I mean, even if it's not France. For everybody, it can help you out to better understand actually the codes of the culture and how the culture is organized and use it for the business, because Erin talks about how the communication can be structured in one country and why it's not the same in another country. For example, the relationship with the hierarchy, the communication style is too direct, not too direct, and that's why sometimes there is a misunderstanding. French working with Americans, French working with Japanese people, because they don't understand the code. So basically, as a foreigner, I think, and if you are motivated to come to France, there is a reason. Of course, there is a motivation. You love the country, you have a super job offer, but you will need to live here. So I think it's like somehow pure curiosity to understand, okay, I'm living in this new country, how things work here. Why, for example, French, they're taking every morning half of an hour, 15 minutes for small talk around the coffee. Why this coffee machine meetings, are happening? Because indeed, some decisions are taken in the morning around a coffee, not signed, on the paper during an official meeting. Why, for the French people, it's so important to take time to have a decent lunch, sometimes with a glass of wine, why this obsession about croissant in the morning that are brought by the colleagues. So those are the small things that actually build you the image of the culture where you will be working and help you to understand better how you actually use these small tips to maybe get where you want to get even in your career, to maybe even somehow manipulate the rules.
Yeah, there's like, I think I hear you saying there's a lot of layers in this. There is a hierarchy, and it takes time to learn, not only to learn and speak French, but to start learning how the structure exists and functions, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, let's go back to the CVs and networking. You said that the CVs that you receive sometimes are 3 to 5 pages long, and it's just, it's way too long. You also mentioned about networking. Considering today that the ATS, the applicant tracking systems, are very much present with AI making recruitment going from 10 hours to under 15, 20 minutes. What would be some tips to know before the people say, yeah, I need to put a CV together and send it? Because just today I had another coaching where the person said, yeah, I'm putting my CV together. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. I need to get that CV and cover letter out. How can people, global professionals who are looking for a job in France, use their CV but also network in a way where the two are complementary?
Well, I think there are two, as you said, complementary things. For me, all those are the part of the biggest strategy because, okay, I will put my HR role here because I'm really convinced if you don't really know where you want to go, you will never get there. And when I'm talking about where you want to go, it's what you are aiming for in your career. So if you're moving to France, why you want to do this? Because it actually defines your motivation. When we know why, we can actually endure quite a lot of things while we are going there. And that's where I'm talking about the strategy. Strategy, it means how you build the steps to go from point A to point B. And CV and networking, those are also basic steps to me. When you are going to apply for a job opening, for example. So for me, the networking is something that is, if I have to give just one advice, I would tell like, okay, guys, do the networking. CV, of course, too, you have to adapt it to the market rules. But before sending your CV, you can create the connection. The tricky thing about the French job market is like around 70% of the job openings, they are on the hidden job market. It means they are never published. They may never appear on LinkedIn or on Welcome to the Jungle or any other job board, but it will be still there. So if you don't know somebody who might know somebody who knows about this job opening, you might never get there. And even though you send your CV to the company, you still can network and develop the connections with the person, any person. It's preferred at your level in the company that might open you the door. And when I'm talking about open you the door, there are a lot of companies that have the special programs, the referral programs, where the employees, they are even paid if, for example, a candidate that they bring get the job. So it's like win-win situation. So if you get this kind of connection, it can help you out. So for me, it's not about deciding, should I network first and then the CV? Those are two parallel things that are happening at the same time. But networking, I would push it strongly, especially the market now in France is quite complicated. I think you may see it by yourself. I can hear it from everywhere. We can see it on LinkedIn, how many complaints we can see from the people, and not only foreigners, because if you look for TikTok, postings, if you look around in general, even French people who like know by heart the system, they still struggle.
Right.
So that's where the networking card will help you out. It will be a sort of joker, to enter maybe the positions that are not so visible for you. I don't know if it does reply to a question, but
yeah,
for
it
me,
does.
it's not even about CV, but networking. But networking, I mean, if you need to keep in mind something, like one thing, do the networking for sure in France right now.
So how, if you can give us, if we can go a little bit deeper, please, how would someone who is brand new and is just learning, French, how would you go about networking? What would be like a step 1, 2, 3, a simple thing that we could, for example.
Yeah, for example, I would start with LinkedIn. First, you need to study a bit the market. When I'm talking about studying in the market, you need to understand what are the jobs are existing that you can apply to. Because when you're coming from abroad, you have impression that, okay, I was doing international brand management or marketing before, so for sure there will be hundreds of jobs in France for me, especially as I'm bilingual. Sometimes it's not the case, so you need to double check what are the job openings are available now. Also, I would be careful to check the names of the positions, because sometimes in one culture it can be called one thing, and in France it will be a slightly different particular name. So you can use LinkedIn for that. You can go to LinkedIn, type, for example, Paris if you're interested in Parisian region, marketing if you're searching for marketing, and then you will see what are the job openings available right now, and you can double check what are the skills required for this kind of job, for example. And then if you see the companies that you are interested in and you want to apply to the job openings existing there, then you can do a deeper research of the people from this company available on the LinkedIn. And there's a lot of actually advices telling like, connect with HR, connect with HR, connect with HR. I'm not against connecting to a lot of people. The problem is sometimes the HR, they're so overwhelmed. So people, they're connecting with HR and they don't get any reply. And then they blame HR, telling like, anyways, they don't do anything and they're just spending the money of the company. So whatever, HR are useless. I would highly suggest to maybe find people who are working already in the field you are aiming for example, in the marketing, and quite the same level you were working before, because it will be easier to create a connection. And then you can try to write them with something cool. Because for me, the networking is like, I don't know, when you're coming, for example, to knock to the door of your neighbor that you never met, you will not come and say like, hey neighbor, I need a job, here's my CV. Basically, you start with, okay, hi, How are you doing? It's a nice evening. So I would love to know a bit better, something new about you. I would love to connect. Maybe I'm a new on this market. I would love to learn something more about the job you're doing within this company because I love this company. It's my dream company. So basically, you're trying to create the first connection. And then you start to maybe asking question, okay, do you have a reference program in your company? Do you have maybe some tips if I want to work with this company? What are the best advices? What are the projects you're working now on, guys? And also use LinkedIn and this amazing tool to actually check the information about this person and about the company. So when you do this kind of research, it's much more easier to build a connection. And then you do this with all the companies you are interested in. So basically, you understand what are the job openings existing and you create the connections at the same time.
Okay, all right. So these are some great tips. I hope all of you that are interested are listening to this. Is like a wealth of information. So usually, if we continue in this sense, let's say I'm networking and taking the step by step. I'm verifying my titles and I'm looking at my jobs, and if they match from the country I come from to the companies and the titles that are there, and then I start talking and chatting and applying. Now, when it comes time to, okay, you're asking advice and there's some good advice, and the moment comes, well, send in your CV. How does this go?
The CV sending, well, basically, if you have a job openings, there are two possibilities. You're applying on LinkedIn or you're applying on the company site. You will see, I think, quite fast if the company is using ATS because you have automatic confirmation often that the company received, for example, your your CV, and they will review it and so on. And of course, if there's a lot of applicants, and sometimes on the site like LinkedIn, for example, you can see how many applicants send the CV, then we as HR, as if we are using the ATS system, we will have this first pre-selection of the CVs that are aligning with our expectations. And that's why, for example, to my clients, I always say, be careful when you read the job opening because there's a lot of information hidden there.
Right.
First, of course, the mandatory thing, you will see them straight away, what is non-negotiable, but also try to read between the lines. And, we talk a lot now about keywords that you have to use on your LinkedIn. And if you don't have LinkedIn, guys, I would highly suggest to have it in English, at least, and in French, if you're at ease with French or even learning, because it shows to the French people that you're actually trying to integrate. And if it's a French HR who's coming on your LinkedIn page, he or she will see that, okay, actually, he's trying or she's trying to do something useful with the language. So getting back to this pre-screening thing, you need to take account of these keywords. So of course, the ATS will read and will find the match in your CV with the keywords that we pre-selected. And if there's a match, you will be in the special pile where HR is coming, the physical person actually, and going through the CVs. And in terms of CVs, if we're talking about the structure, I really highly recommend to first have a profile descriptions because I will explain why exactly. And then the structure is always chronological. In France, we start with the latest experience, and then we're going down, explaining what we've been doing through the years. Also, be careful if, for example, you have more than 15 years of experience, not all the experience need to be put it on the CV. So you have to be selective. It's a real, actually detailed work on the CV that you have to do. The picture is not mandatory if we are talking about the CV in France. So it depends. If you're applying, I don't know, for position when you will be seen a lot publicly, of course it will be useful, but I mean it's not something that you have to put, at least in France, because there are countries where you still have to put it the photo.
Right.
Of course, the list of skills, the list of diplomas, especially if you have some French diplomas, because in France we love diplomas. We love these business schools, we love grandes écoles and so on. So it can be useful for you if you speak few languages. Of course, mention the languages and the level of the languages. And if you have some passions, you can also mention that. But basically, when we check the CV, we spend few seconds on the top third part of the CV. So what we are screening is who you are, the name, This profile description, it means that you have to explain in 3-5 lines who you are, what you can bring on the table, related, of course, to the job you're applying for. And in case you're a foreigner and you have a visa, good visa status, you can also mention that, because for us HR, if we are talking about the foreigners, we straight away will understand that, okay, I don't need to pay any money, or the person can start straight away because he or she already has a visa. So we are screening this top part of the CV to understand, actually, are we going through the CV deeper or not?
Mm-hmm.
And then basically we start to study the details of the CV to understand if there's a match for a job we have open or not. Because and when you get ready for this kind of interactions with HR, or in general, when you're preparing your CV, you need to keep in mind one thing. If we have a job open, it means in a company we have a sort of pain that we need to solve quite fast.
Right.
We have a person maybe lacking in the organization. We have maybe a job opening, so we need to create a position. So we actually very in a hurry, and we want to meet somebody who will come and solve these problems for us. So basically, your task is to make the recruiter, the hiring manager, the HR understand that you can be a perfect fit. And that's why you need to read well the job opening, to get some information maybe through the networking, and to use it in your CV. And of course, do not list the tasks in your CV. I would highly recommend, all the STAR method, KPIs, everybody talks about that. So numbers, they speak volumes. If you have something to highlight with numbers, it will be so much easier to decode. And if you're coming from a foreign country and your company you worked with for a few years is not like hugest company, well known everywhere, like not Microsoft, Google, or something like that, but maybe a big but local company, do not hesitate to put some details. The turnover, for example, how big is the business, and of course your impact on this business. Because what we need to understand in any job search, if I bring you on board in the company, I want to understand what will be your impact. And of course, I will try to read this information through your CV. I will search for that.
All right.
Sorry, it was maybe too lengthy, but
No, but I think it's great.
Details, CV and so on, because I can talk hours about that.
And absolutely, there'll be a replay. So if you want to rewind, you can, to go back and really note these great details. At what point does the candidate mention or can mention that contact that they had, so they can so that you can see that someone internally has referred them?
It's normally you passing your CV to a person who put it in a special place in the company. I don't know, on SharePoint, on a special program. That is like depending on the company. So basically, you just give your CV to the person who accepts to transfer your CV.
Okay, all right.
And then, of course, in I don't know, a couple of weeks, you can double check with the person, because sometimes people inside the company who transfer your CV in the frame of this kind of programs, they don't get the information straight away. It depends on the size of the company. For example, if you're working for the huge multinational, the layers, they are quite, complicated, and they are many. Compared to a smaller company where you have 200 persons, for example, it will be much easier.
All right, all right. How about the first interview? What are some tips and tricks to keep in mind to succeed and continue after the first interview?
Well, if we are talking about the foreigners, for example, of course, to get ready, take into account the French culture. So you need to double check what is expected from you in France when you are passing the interview. So, of course, to get ready. I mean by that, try to understand the business and what you can be asked to do within this position. Because it's not about only coming and telling what they want to hear, but to show them that you were curious enough to understand how the company works. Of course, you will have half of this information about the insider things, about the business during the interview, and you have the right to ask the questions. And I would invite everybody to ask the questions, but you have also to get ready. And by the way, when we are working with clients, I highly suggest them to use the preparation of the cover letter if they have to send it, to dig a bit more about the company and to use this information while they are writing the cover letter. It means in the beginning, for example, in the first paragraph, what we always read in a cover letter is like, "Hi, my name is Yevgeniya. I'm super excited to apply to this position because I'm so perfect," and so on. What I suggest often, instead of talking straight away about you, talk about the position and why this company is so exciting for you, because it attracts attention. And it actually makes me understand straight away, okay, you did some research, you understand a bit what we are doing. Maybe you even understand that we are doing like interesting, exciting projects, because we were talking about that not only on our side, but there were some, I don't know, articles appearing in Le Monde or somewhere else. So when you do this research, actually, it's not a wasted time because it helps you out to get ready for the potential job interview later. And honestly, it happened to me that some of the candidates did some research about me. And it was very funny because, of course, it set off straight away, this kind of nice ambience, because the person comes, "I know that you're coming from Kazakhstan." And so, I mean, of course, it will not impact the final decision that myself and the hiring manager will take at the end of the day, but still it helps out to have this, relationship maybe smoother.
Sure.
Yeah. And me, it happened, for example, to use my own language if I know that my mother tongue, if I know that the candidate speaks Russian too, for example. So it just, to chill down sometimes, because people can be very stressed during the interviews. So basically, you need to understand what value you can bring in the company when you're applying to the job. Research about the business, about the company, if you want a bit about the person that you will meet, and also get ready with your questions.
All right.
And of course, bring the examples, like valuable examples, some numbers, the impact. Again, you're starting with the CV, because CV is just opening the door, and it's during the interview that main things are happening. So this CV, you have the very, short, because it's normally 1 or 2 pages. That's the maximum information about you. And during the interview, you have this possibility to actually talk more about you. So use this possibility, because, well, you have to be proud of what you've done. So share these kind of things with your potential employer.
Very sound advice. You've mentioned, and we've talked a lot about things. If you were to summarize, what would make a good bilingual candidate really stand out, kind of highlighting what you already said?
Well, first, of course, if you are bilingual, trilingual, you have to highlight this, because it's a huge advantage, and especially for some positions, if you want to come and work for international company, it can be very useful. And for example, I saw some of my clients do not mention like Hindi language, because they think like, okay, why I need to mention, nobody speaks Hindi here. I'm convinced you need to mention that, because imagine tomorrow your company you're working for want to develop business in India. So they will think about, okay, we have somebody speaks Hindi. So of course, highlighting your knowledge of the languages, but also if you want to play this card of the languages, you need to make them understand how these languages was useful for you. So it's not only about, okay, I'm speaking languages, but I'm using these 3 languages while I'm, for example, having the interviews with the candidates. And thanks to that, I was able, for example, to recruit for several positions which were multilingual, and increase the percentage of retention, because it helped to create the connection. So you give that like good examples. And of course, as a bilingual, a trilingual, you're sort of translator from my perspective. And it's not about language, it's about translating from one culture to another. So
Right.
you understand perfectly, like organizing a project in France, it's one thing, it's about process, it's about communication. While organizing a project in Germany, it will be more about deadline, respecting the rules. So you can combine all these and you can actually highlight these kind of things, because if the person in front of you, hiring manager or HR, does not understand you, it's your work to make them understand this.
Right, and take the time. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, time flies by, and we can, I think, continue on and on and on. Now, as we're closing down, what would be your last piece of advice for those who are trying to get into the French market?
Maybe it will be too philosophical, but be curious. Be curious, because it's what I mean. I will try to explain what I'm meaning by saying that. When you're coming in a new culture, in a new country, it's this curiosity who brings you to ask a lot of questions, to research the market, to understand, for example, the role of the diplomas, how the management work, what are the formalities are, for example, mandatory or not mandatory in France. It will help you to understand that sometimes in France, taking a decision can take time, because in France we have this tendency to overanalyze, have several meetings, long meetings, and then again meetings, and so on. So we need time to take this decision, and you as a candidate might have this impression like, okay, it's never happening. So when you are curious, you go and search for this kind of information, and it's what I call do your market research. You understand how things work locally.
Right.
And when you have this information, it's easier for you because you stress a bit less. You understand why it's happening, and you question yourself a bit less, and you're a bit less frustrated. And I think it's not only about France, but in general, when we are talking about, a career abroad, global careers, when you go into another country, you need to know the rules. So do the research, and even before going to the country, you still can play this card of networking or develop the network even before coming. That can be useful for you later. You have not to hesitate to do this just by respecting the local rules. And for that, if you are too curious, you have a lot of books, you have a lot of, actually with AI, a lot of information is available. So you can even Google and, or I don't know, use Perplexity, typing like, okay, what are the ways of approaching a French manager? What should I avoid? So getting the information, because for me, the information is something that actually helps you out.
Okay, so basically be curious and get to know the rules and start being familiar, and that will also decrease the anxiety, and it will show pretty much in the process, especially in the interview, right?
And if I may add, please do not forget your own value, because sometimes I see it when people are coming abroad, they forget that they did a lot of things in their own countries. They have impression that, okay, if I'm coming in a new country, they don't understand me. I don't know how to translate my achievements that I made back in my country in the local language and the local rules. And you start to be tired, frustrated, you start to doubt yourself. And I think it's a very, very dangerous part here, because all of us, we have something to sell, I'm pretty sure. And even if it's a small experience that you have back from your country, you still can sell it, depending on how you manage that, how you approach that.
Absolutely, it goes a long way. Absolutely. So, Yevgenia, where can people find and learn more about you?
On LinkedIn, I'm definitely present, not very often, but yeah, I have my profile, and I'm started to post more and more, trying to share some tips there. And I also have a small, for the moment at least, small blog on Instagram. It's called Bonjour HR, because I'm trying, of course, to share, some French vibe, and of course some tips coming from insider, because I use this opportunity to work as HR, so to know the system from inside. But I'm also a foreigner, so I have this perspective, and I know the struggles, and I try to share this kind of things. And basically you can just contact me even on LinkedIn, and I'm very open, to connections, like we connected too, just by chatting.
Right.
Because myself, if I'm talking about curiosity, I'm very driven by curiosity myself, and I'm very excited about working with different cultures, knowing different cultures, traveling, trying to understand why Japanese behave like that and not other way. What are the cultural particularities, for example, in Germany and so on. So yeah, I'm very open to the contacts in general.
Yevgeniya, thank you so much for sharing these valuable insights on moving through the French job market and turning cultural intelligence into a competitive advantage. You've given the listeners some practical tools they can use pretty much right away. To our listeners, you've just heard from someone who's mastered the art of bridging cultures, or getting there, right, in the professional world. If you're a global job professional looking to crack the French job market, Yevgeniya's expertise could be exactly what you need. So connect with her. All her information is right below in the caption. And thank you for joining us on TPTalks Working Global. I hope you've discovered at least one teeny weeny little golden nugget to guide your international career journey here in France. So keep following for more stories that illuminate life and careers across cultures. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Happy holidays. Thank you, Yevgeniya.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.